Welcome to the NFL Player Props Coast to Coast podcast brought to you by TheLines.com. The first one ever. I am Josh Lander coming to you guys from the West Coast. Also joined by my guys. We got Mo Nawara in the Midwest and Nate Weitzer on the East Coast. Might remember us from some MLB pod as well. But we are moving into football and player props that we are going to be bringing to you guys each and every Friday, spanning the league, looking at what it is that we want to bring you guys. Probably bring you some rushing, receiving, and throwing, obviously, props as well. Maybe throw some defense in there from time to time. We obviously like a couple of parlays here and there. So we're just going to have some fun and get you guys a lot of stuff, everything centered around those NFL player props. We will be using TheLines.com as there's that great odds finder tool on there for you guys to go ahead and shop all of those player props each week as they come out in the NFL this season. All 18 weeks that we will have for you here. Want to make sure that you are liked and subscribed to that page as well. Like I said, we'll be bringing you these videos each and every Friday, all season long. So I want to make sure you are able to come back, keep checking those out on our YouTube page as well. And as always, if you do still need a FanDuel or DraftKings account, make sure you head to fdpicks.com or dkpicks.com. Find those listings in your area. We are going to get started with, I believe, passing props, gentlemen. Nate, I want to start it off with you. I know there's been a little bit of dissent between us here. We've got a bunch of overs. Mo definitely being cautious there, making sure we know we have some unders as well. But let's kick things off with an over, and I'm happy to see, actually, it's my New York Giants and Danny Dimes. Correct, Nate?
Yeah, and let's be perfectly clear here. I'm not expecting Daniel Jones to have a great fantasy day or light it up or throw multiple touchdowns. That's not at all what I'm targeting. What I am targeting is a ton of short pass attempts, hopefully for 20 and a half completions where his prop is. Might even like 32 and a half attempts more, because this is one way to just approach this, is that the Titans, you can't beat them on the ground. In their last season, I mean, they were just absurd, allowing 52 rushing yards per game at 3.2 yards per carry. And as a result, they finished the season allowing the second most receptions to wideouts. The Giants' wide receiver core is depleted already and just a absolute train wreck based on injuries and based on separation on the boundary, however, like Kenny Galladay. But they have Wan'Dale Robinson and the slot, and Saquon at least healthy for now. That's a lot of really short completions, especially in Brian Daboll's new offense, we assume. Danny Dimes is going to be getting the ball out quicker. He's going to be getting higher percentage completions. And the Giants, not really going to be able to establish the run. We know they were 31st in adjusted line yards on offense last year. Their offensive line has really no shot against this Titans defensive line. So at plus 5.5, you expect them to be playing from behind. You expect Jones to just be throwing early and often as they try to play catch up, and that's why I just like the attempts and I like the completions as a pretty safe bet here.
Yeah, I mean, I would follow along with that. I do like the idea of Saquon as well in terms of some receptions or receiving yards. I know it's 26 and a half on DraftKings. That was something that I was considering as well, knowing that they are going to be thin once again at wide receiver, starting out with Sterling Shepard being hurt as well for those Giants. I'm going to go ahead and move it on to you there, Mo. I do want to get us to some unders. I don't want to paint you out here as the crusty curmudgeon. I just want to paint you as the guy who knows that unders generally hit a bit more. It is week one, so there's a lot of uncertainty, but I know we're looking at Aaron Rodgers here in his matchup with the Vikings, who had a really, really bad pass defense last season, but you still seem to think that 259 and a half on DraftKings is too many passing yards for Rodgers in week one.
Yeah, I would say passing was probably the one where I had the toughest time finding something that I liked. I guess maybe it's the easiest one for the computers to project. The Vikings, I'm not in love with their secondary. Definitely not. It looks pretty questionable to me. But this is more of a bet on how I expect the Packers to play offense this year and just how bad their receiving core is. Man, I mean, we saw one game last year that I think could maybe hint at what we're going to see from the Packers. I'm not going to sit here and tell you Aaron Rodgers is going to throw for 180 yards a game, but last year against Arizona, they didn't have any wide receivers because Devontae, I think, was in COVID protocols, if I'm recalling correctly. So he was thrown to a bunch of just gym teachers, basically, and he had 184 yards on 37 attempts. I mean, if that's like what this offense is going to look like, I think that 259 and a half seems pretty high. I'm expecting them to run the ball a lot. I'm expecting a lot of shorter passes to Aaron Jones because he might be their best receiver. And even like could be worse this week. It sounds like Alan Lazard's probably not going to play. I don't believe he practiced yesterday. So yeah, and the Vikings, I mean, they did add some pieces up front on D, but they stunk last year against the run. So even if they're just like mediocre, I mean, the Packers do have a nice interior of their offensive line. I think they should have some success running the ball here. And I think on the other side of the ball, their defense is going to keep Minnesota from just marching up and down the field. So I guess I'm seeing like a slower paced game, and that could drag down his numbers a bit as well.
Yeah, I was looking at Aaron Jones' reception. I mean, it's 4.5 on DraftKings at minus 165. So you are probably right, especially with Lazard out, that it looks like Aaron Jones is going to be the best receiver. I mean, AJ Dillon actually had a pretty good time catching the ball out of the backfield last season as well, with a couple of like 6 and 7 reception games for him. So I think there's lots to like about Rodgers getting maybe a decent amount of short attempts that really is going to depend on can they break those open. Minnesota's defense might not be as bad as last season. They did a few things to shore it up, but it was pretty bad on both sides of the ball last season. So I do think there's something to like with the Packers. We just really don't know what we're going to get as he doesn't have Devontae Adams for the first time in a long time, right? And that's obviously going to play a big role there. So the last one I would throw at you guys for passing yards is Justin Herbert. This is in Nate's article on TheLines.com as well, touching on all this stuff. 283.5 passing yards, 36.5 attempts. This is a game that I do like as well for a lot of offense in terms of that Raiders and the Chargers matchup here. Minus 3.5 is the line there at a total of 52.5. So there's some expectation for points. And Herbert, I mean, when you just, what else do you need to know? I do think this is a continuing of his campaign to really get closer to MVP status in the league, or really assuming a top 5 position in terms of quarterbacks at this point. Josh Allen obviously had something to say about that last night with a great game in the opener, but I do think there's something to be said for Herbert and a lot of offense in this one. Both teams will be throwing a bunch, as I don't love that rushing attack, especially for the Raiders, and obviously Eckler getting a lot of time, a lot of receptions for him. So even in that sort of rush game, it's really sort of short passes a lot more than it is just straight handoffs to a guy like Eckler. But let's move on to rushing props here. That should be pretty fun as well. I'm going to kick it off for us and just talk about Jonathan Taylor for 2 seconds because I do, once again, I'm going with an over on this one, and it's 96.5 yards. It feels, I don't know, this feels obviously like it's a super weak play, and that obviously I sound like a fish with this one, but it's the guy expecting the most yards out of, once again this season, best rushing attack coming back from last season, obviously the leading rusher, but this is also about what he does to the Houston Texans, which is an atrocious defense, especially against the run. They gave up the second most rushing yards last season, specifically to running backs and in general, almost 5 yards per carry given up and 18 teeters just to running backs in terms of rushing there. In 4 matchups with Houston, we're talking about almost 6.5 yards per carry for Jonathan Taylor, and that's including the first 2 games where he only rushed the ball roughly 13 times per game in those first 2 matchups, still had those 6 yards per carry. And then last season, those 2 games just going for 145 and 143 respectively against that just crumbling Houston defense. I think you can expect that once again for him to take the pressure off of Matt Ryan and easily surpass the 96.5 and get over 100 and really start his campaign off correctly. There's really not much, in my opinion, that's stopping him. So Nate, let me know what you think about that one before I even toss to Mo, and then give me a rushing prop as well.
Yeah, I mean, betting on 100-yard day is always a bit dicey, and throwing out all the ways he's demolished the Texans is also interesting to me because that means, new regime under Lovie Smith, they're going to be selling out to stop Taylor. The Colts are going to be using a lot of play action to play off that, and there's a lot of ways this game can unfold where suddenly Taylor isn't the number one option the way he was last year, or, the huge workload that he had. Nyheim Hines gets mixed in a little bit more. Matt Ryan is spreading the ball out a little bit more. I'd definitely be wary of this. And I know people are wary of the other top running back in terms of preseason expectations because of his injury history, but I am on Christian McCaffrey in terms of receptions, 5.5 at plus money right now, and just slightly below minus 110 for him to score a touchdown at any point on according to DraftKings. I mean, as long as he's out there healthy, he's obviously a usage monster. You look at his last full season, he played nearly 99% of snaps, averaged 86.5 rushing yards, 7.2 receptions on 9 targets per game. I think Baker Mayfield is an obvious quarterback upgrade from who he's played with the last few years, and also a guy who's going to get the ball out of his hands quick, who's going to use a little bit of mobility on some sprints and get McCaffrey in space really quickly with some of these things that Rule has talked about using, like lining him up in the slot, getting peppering him with targets. I like the Panthers to be able to win and to be able to counter Cleveland's strength, which is that defensive line, by getting McCaffrey in space again with screens, with quick little hitters. So I mean, the receptions and the receiving yards and a touchdown is what I lean to more than his rushing yards, because I don't want to depend on that offensive line to win against the Browns. But McCaffrey as a receiver is just an unbelievable talent.
Yeah, that's fair. I'm really not going to argue with anything you just said. I don't love Mayfield. Just didn't like Darnold, obviously, and everything else that they were throwing out last year at quarterback. But Mo, if you do want to tell us why we're complete noobs here for our 2 picks, I'm happy to hear it. Otherwise, I'd love to hear what it is that you're looking at for in terms of that rushing.
I mean, Jonathan Taylor, I could definitely see him running for 150. This Texans defense is atrocious, but I do agree with what Nate was saying about we don't really know what this Colts offense is going to look like yet. I'm very curious to see. I think that the O-line should take a little bit of a step back too. So definitely curious to see what happens there. If I had to pick one, I think I would pick over. But yeah, McCaffrey, I don't know. I'm a little wary of that one. Just I think he should have a big year, but I don't think of Baker Mayfield as a big dump-off guy. He's always trying to extend plays and look downfield. And, I mean, the Browns actually have a lot of speed in their linebacking core with Owusu Karamoa. That dude was actually kind of a monster in coverage last year. Yeah, we'll see what Baker looks like in the new offense, but McCaffrey should have a big year. I don't know about this. This is going to be, I think, a really slow game without much offense from both teams. I mean, the market thinks so, and I definitely do too. For my rushing one, I went Derrick Henry under. I did this several times the last couple of years. It usually doesn't work out for me, but I mean, the Giants have a lot of muscle up front, man, and I don't think this Titans offense is going to be very good. Their passing offense is not going to strike fear into the hearts of anybody. So I don't see why Derrick Henry isn't going to be top 3 in 8-man boxes faced. And the Giants, like I said, they have some muscle up front. Dexter Lawrence, Leonard, and Kayvon Thibodeau is going to play, it looks like. So that's pretty big. I just don't know why anybody's going to respect their passing game. And I don't trust this Titans O-line either. Maybe like 1.5 starting O-linemen that I like. Taylor Lewan is solid. Ben Jones might be okay, but other than that, these names are not going to inspire any confidence. And I mean, Derrick Henry is just a guy where, like, if you don't make a hole for him and he has to, like, move laterally in the backfield, nothing good is going to happen, basically, because he has the footwork of, a 1990s NBA center. So I just think 100-yard games, like somebody said earlier, is tough to come by, and I think in this matchup, for sure, it should be tough to come by for Henry.
I just really want to know who was the 90s center that came into your head when you made that. Mine was Olden Polynice. I don't know which one you have for me, but it's a solid reference.
Matt Geiger?
I like it. Very solid. Nate, you can go when you do your receiving prop.
Yeah, so we're moving on to receiving props here, and I think week one, there are, if you really scan the lines, you can find some that are just clearly off. And there's actually a big difference in the market for Adam Thielen. On FanDuel, in terms of his yardage, it's 48.5 instead of 50, where it is most other places. On DraftKings, he's getting extra juice on a touchdown at plus 185. And the industry standard is 4.5 receptions for him. It seems like we've forgotten how solid this guy is because he kind of ended last season with ankle issues and faded away. He was also in the dead Zimmer era, and now he's playing under Kevin O'Connell, which he has openly said feels rejuvenating and exciting. And did he mention it's exciting that he's not playing under Mike Zimmer? He's extremely talented, and there's just so much hype around Justin Jefferson, including what the Packers are going to do, which is shadow him with Jair Alexander pretty often, we think. So Thielen has a good matchup on the other side if he gets Eric Stokes, who's a little more big-bodied, wide-hipped, if you will. I think Thielen can burn him. He has burned the Packers when they play on turf. Their last 2 home games for the Vikings, he's posted a combined line of 14 for 192 and 3 tutties. So not as good at Lambeau, but this game, 47.5 point total, close line, new offense in Minnesota. And I think Thielen will be just as productive as Jefferson out of the gate in this particular matchup. I think O'Connell knows how to spread it out and use a guy like Thielen, the way we saw with Cooper Kupp last year, of course. And so I think his props are way too low here. I would definitely be hitting this with confidence.
Yeah, I do love the sort of season that could be for Thielen, and really the expectation. That was a little bit more of a fantasy pick for me, just that I think I got him with great value because people forgot about him, and everyone obviously loves Justin Jefferson, which they should. But I do think it's also a good year for Kirk Cousins. He's got 2 really solid wide receivers, and we all just forgot about Thielen because we're all just so in love with Jefferson. And he's obviously had a few injuries as well, missing a couple games here and there that really just sort of hurt his stock a bit. But there's no reason not to continue to like him. And I'm just going to continue on with that exact same theme because I'm talking about Juju Smith-Schuster just for 2 seconds. And it's really just about the fact that the Cardinals are bad against the deep ball right now, and they have been for a couple seasons. I really don't trust that backfield that's getting a bit older as well in the secondary there. But also, looking at it, Juju and really why he's been forgotten, because he's just had noodle arm quarterbacks throwing to him for the last 2 seasons. And really, the thing that really stands out to me in the difference, not just obviously, in that rookie season, having an incredible season with 1,400 yards and a ton of receptions, playing all 16 games that season, had a few missed games the next season. But really, it's not about the targets. It's not even about the receptions as much as it is. And obviously, the injury last season, not playing any games in a complete crap season for the Steelers. But it's really that average distance of his targets. He's not it was the first 2 seasons, there were about 9 in his first season and then 10 in his second season. So he's not even getting the ball thrown to him until he's 8, 9, 10 yards down the field every time. And then you look at the next 2 seasons when Roethlisberger couldn't even throw the ball 9 yards down the field. And now we're talking about average depth of targets of 5.5 and 6.5 yards. So that's completely, dependent on someone who's a big bodied, really good runner with the football, really solid route runner, and obviously really good hands as well. Juju's still a guy that now he's playing with Patrick Mahomes, whose average depth of targets are going to be somewhere closer to like 12 and 15 yards consistently. Obviously, it'll end around 10, 11, 12 for him, but it's still going to be way better for a guy like Juju, who around him, obviously, he's still got, guys like McCall and Hardman, and obviously Travis Kelce's still there. Might be a potential slight dip in Kelce's stats this season. And then, you're talking about Sky Moore. So really everybody around Juju is a lot less experienced or just not quite as good in terms of specifically the wide receiver position. I think 46.5 yards for him is this is a time that we can get ahead of it, because I think that's going to start looking a lot more like 70, 75 moving throughout the season after we get a look at Juju playing with Pat Mahomes. So finish things off for us though, Mo, and give us your last one. This one was the one that caused the most debate in our pre-show chatter here in terms of AJ Green.
Yeah, so coming into this game, it looks like Zach Ertz isn't going to play. Rondale Moore got hurt in practice yesterday. Not sure what's going to happen there. I know he has a little bit of a different role than AJ Green, where I guess he's a little more of a kind of gadget player, where AJ is just lining up pure on the outside. But yeah, those are still targets that have to go to somebody, and especially in the red zone with Ertz, he was a pretty decent weapon for them last year, surprisingly, after he looked like his career was just about over. So yeah, I found an AJ Green yes touchdown plus 300. Rest of the market's between plus 190 and plus 245. This one was on DraftKings. It's way off market price, and I don't know who else is going to catch a touchdown for Arizona in a game where the total is 53.5. So yeah, I mean, I think usually these yes touchdowns are horrible, but I think plus 300 on this one in this game against a secondary that I'm pretty optimistic about by the end of the season, but I think they're going to need some time to integrate some rookies and different new pieces here for the Chiefs. So, yeah, he looks like the number one candidate to score a touchdown, honestly, for the Cardinals through the air in this game. So plus 300 seems pretty insane.
Yeah, and the pre-show debate we had is AJ Green just totally washed though and incapable of creating separation against some pretty good Chiefs corners, and that would be my concern. And also the fact that Kyler Murray's probably just going to take off and do a lot himself. There's also a bit of history there with Marquise Brown. I do think he will be a red zone threat. I think I would rather look at those two guys and what they do on the fast turf, and particularly Murray's rushing numbers or rushing touchdowns for him, because I think in a situation where he's trying to keep pace with the Chiefs at home, he's going to be putting a lot on his shoulders, and trying to put some of that off-season distractions behind everyone and show that what he can do is just make plays in various ways. And even if it's not with Rondale Moore, I'm sure the Cardinals will be throwing someone else out there who's a little younger and a little more spry than Mr. Green.
Like who? Go check out that depth chart.
I will. I do. I'm okay. I was originally on Team Nate here, but to be specific about what Mo's saying, it is strictly a touchdown. So it's really about how many times are the Cardinals going to be inside the 20, around the 10, and around the 8, whatever it is, and need. It's obviously my fear would be Kyler Murray is going to take off. The team that rushes the most inside the red zone the last 2 seasons is the Cliff Kingsbury offense run Arizona Cardinals. So they love James Conner. They not Damian Williams. They're going to be handing the ball off a lot in there. That's what I would worry about. However, at plus 300 for the one guy who's the red zone target for them to be catching the ball in the red zone, that I fully understand and seems like it's definitely worth a little bit of juice on a plus 300 return there. Can I get an amen on that, maybe, Nate?
Yeah, I mean, bet small. Bet small.
It's week 1. I would say I'm definitely betting small no matter what to get some feelers out there and see what I like. But this has been a pretty fun first episode, gentlemen. I think we'll continue on with this format, bringing you guys, 1, maybe 2 here or there really, I guess we're saying like 3 or 4 per rushing, receiving, and passing as well in there. Obviously, if we see some other stuff that we like, some pretty fun stuff, obviously all the time on DK, FanDuel, and all of the other U.S. sporting sites that you can make sure you check out on TheLines.com, as we do have that great odds finder tool. I should say Mo rather, said before we even came on the air that he really loves that tool, so I know he wasn't just saying that as a company man line, and I would say it's the same for me as well. It's really, really easy to find everything you need when there's so much to look at out there for player props, especially, in all these fun different angles to bet on the NFL this season. Either way, we are back, baby. I know everybody's super pumped about it, so we will be bringing you these shows each and every Friday. Make sure you stay on us all 18 weeks this season. And until we see you next, happy betting.
Eight.